listening to a pretty interesting presentation by Ken Hammond, I believe, PhD, on socialism with Chinese characteristics. It's on the Critical Theory Workshop channel, which is put on by Gabriel Rockhill and Christina Ponce de Leon, I believe. And Ken was presenting on socialism with Chinese characteristics. He's lived and worked and studied about that for, I think, like 4 decades. And it's really interesting to just is it a socialist state? Has it deviated? Is it just capitalism in disguise? Like, what exactly is going on there? Or did it maybe start to deviate away from socialism after the opening up and reform under Deng Xiaoping? And that was in the mid to late 1970s. But as Ken talked about, like, prior to the opening up under Deng Xiaoping, there was a egalitarianism in China, in egalitarianism of poverty, meaning pretty much everybody was very poor and had a low standard of living. And so in order to alleviate that, they had to open up. They had to introduce some more capitalist elements, open up to capital investment to increase the rate of development and lift up, people out of poverty, which they have been able to do. Is that 850 million people are no longer living in extreme poverty in China. That is amazing. And also backtracking to that egalitarianism of poverty, that's not what socialism is, right? It's about building up the productive forces in a society to raise people's material conditions, to improve their ways of life. It's not about everybody struggling to get by. It's about having a planned economy that's designed to meet the needs of the people, not based on profit, right? So China definitely has a centrally planned economy, and they are continuing to work out these different contradictions that still exist. So as Ken pointed out, the opening up has led to more inequality in terms of income of people, and that's something that they're still trying to work on and balance, and more of a kind of a capitalist presence. But the big difference, they have capitalists in China, like, was it Jack Ma, I believe, is a billionaire from China, but they don't control the government, which is completely different than what we have here in the United States. We have capitalists, and they buy the politicians. Just look at $100 million that Elon Musk gave to the Trump campaign, and now you see them palling around at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm sure, Musk was just doing that out of benevolence. He just really loves Trump's platform or style or whatever. No, of course he's doing that because he knows that he can buy influence, and he gives Trump enough money, Trump will do his bidding once elected. So that's a little different, right? And socialism is it's a path, it's a learning process. You have to adapt to the conditions as they present themselves, but ultimately, obviously, a very important part of socialism is being able to keep the socialist project going. And I think that's one of the ways China's been able to do that is by opening up, trying to balance out these contradictions, trying to work through them, trying to do the best that they can, while the U.S. is still trying to wage a war on China and potentially, if I can start World War III over Taiwan. And like he pointed out, right? No country exists as a utopia. China's not perfect. There's still a lot of contradictions that exist there, but the Communist Party of China, is carrying out that Marxist-Leninist tradition of, really analyzing the material conditions on the ground to inform their decisions of what needs to be done going forward. They've also been making a lot of investments into renewable energy. They have an amazing, high-speed rail transportation system. We don't have that here in the United States. They're not an empire. They're not exporting war. They export, infrastructure projects like airports and schools and hospitals and high-speed rail, roads, etc., which again, as Ken pointed out, is not necessarily, or it's not out of just, altruism or that they think those places should have them, which they do, but because it also benefits China, win-win cooperation. So pretty interesting, right? Socialism with Chinese characteristics. And that also just how quickly they've been able to raise up their level of development is pretty amazing. And also they wanted to, by opening up, build up their technological capacity. So not only do they manufacture a lot of consumer goods, but they're the world's largest manufacturer of electric cars, right? Some really decently priced ones that we can't get here because of the tariffs that exist. And the fact that, they almost played the U.S. against themselves in a sense, because the U.S. capitalists outsourced all of these manufacturing and kind of textile work jobs, right, to China, and China used that to build up their own productive forces and then expand beyond that kind of base manufacturing to further develop the productive forces in China. So they kind of beat the West in a sense at their own game, which is pretty interesting. And obviously the capitalists in the U.S. wanted to do that so they could shortchange the working class people here and go, exploit the workers in China, which they could get away with paying a lot less than they could here in the United States. So socialism with Chinese characteristics, and again, they're on the, like I said, it's a path. They're on a path towards socialism. They're not there yet, but I share Ken Hammond's perspective that they are on the correct track and they are steering in that direction, and as well as the fact that the commanding heights of the economy are still state-owned and run. Like I said, there are capitalist influence in the country, but they don't control the government. The capitalist class doesn't have the politicians as puppets on their hand like they do here in the U.S. I mean, you can't really think of bankers convicted of bribery or fraud here in the U.S., getting, executed for embezzling from the company or that type of stuff. That type of stuff happens in China. Again, not perfect, but they are working out their own contradictions on their path towards socialism. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll link that talk I was referencing. Peace.